What's going on, everyone? You're back with your boy Jono for another quick math lesson. Today we're going to look at how to calculate the GST, or the Goods and Services Tax, which is a 10% tax in Australia. We're going to learn how to calculate it from a set price, and we're going to find out how much we are actually paying for all of our items. Like I said, this GST is a 10% tax on everything that you buy in Australia. There are some things that are exempt or that don't have to pay the GST, and this is like basic food items or medical supplies that are kind of essential to normal life. But this 10% tax is on absolutely everything. So even if you're not earning enough money to pay tax, you are still paying 10% tax every time you buy something. The idea is supposed to be quite equitable. That means that wealthier people probably buy more stuff, so they'll spend more on tax throughout the entire year. This is how the GST tries to level it out. So wealthy people are still getting taxed more in this system. But again, like I said, if you don't get paid anything, you are still paying tax every time you buy something in Australia. So it can be quite detrimental to people that don't earn enough money, because that 10% would go quite a long way. The way to work out GST is we take the original value of the item, how much the owner wants to sell it for, and then we just have to add 10% on. That is the 10% tax. When we're doing our calculations here, just remember that 10% is the same as 0.1 in decimal form, because I just find that a little bit easier to do on our calculator, or your teacher might say, hey, you've got to do it in decimals. So really all we've got to find is 10% of the original price, and then add that on at the end. In this example, we've got a shirt that's $60, and I want to work out how much I'm actually going to have to pay at the counter. So $60 is what the business wants to charge for it. How much do I have to pay? There are two methods to doing this, and we're going to go through both of them just to see that we do get the exact same answer. The first method, method one, is to find 10%. So 60 times 0.1, which is equal to 6. And then all I've got to do is take the original value and then add on that 6. So the total price is going to be $66. 60 for the business, 6 for the government. Just remember that 0.1 is the same as 10%. So what you can kind of think about it is like there's the 100%, the 60, plus 10%, which is the 6. So I'm finding 110% of the original value. So a little bit more cash. The other method we can do is 60 multiplied by 1.1. And this is equal to 66. So this is just a one-step equation. Instead of doing the find 10% and then add it, this 60 multiplied by 1.1 does it all in one nice step for you. The way to think about this is exactly the same as method 1. We're trying to find 110%. Remember that 1 is 100%, and then that extra 0.1, or the 10%, has been added on already. So we're finding 110% with that 1.1. So what you actually pay when you go to the store and buy something is what's called the post-GST price. So you don't have to work out the GST in the store, it's already done for you. So the post-GST price is the value that the store says plus the tax, and that's equal to the consumer price, or the post-GST price. So if a business says, hey, it's going to cost you $25 to get this service, how much is the post-GST price going to be? All I've got to do is find 10%. So 25 multiplied by 0.1, which is equal to 2.5, or $2.50. Then to find out that final price, it's just the $25 we started with, plus that $2.50. So I'm paying $27.50. Again, you could do it the other way if you wanted to, 25 multiplied by 1.1. Both are going to get you the correct answer. So when we just look at all of the components of this answer, we've got the $25, that's the business price. That's how much they want to sell their service for. Then we've got the tax, the 2.5, or the $2.50. This is 10%, and that's going to the government. And then finally, that $27.50 is what the customer pays. So we've got three major stakeholders in this equation. So these three people, the business, the government, and the consumer, all interact when we're trying to find the final price of a product, right? We know that the business is going to want to make a profit. It might cost them a certain amount of money to make something, but then they want to make extra money on top of that. The government's going to take its 10% every single time. And then finally, you've got to pay absolutely everything. How much it costs to make something, then the profit the business wants, then the tax the government's going to put on, and you're left with the customer price, or the post-GST price. So we're going to have a look at an example taking in all of these factors. This is a little bit of an extension of what we are doing in this topic, but it's more realistic to what's actually going to happen in real life. So we've got a product that costs $110 to make, right? That was the cost price of this item. The business is saying, hey, I want to make a 20% profit, and then the government's going to take their 10% tax. So the major things in this question, $110, 20% profit, and a 10% tax. how much is the customer going to spend at the very end? So to find the business profit, all we've got to take is the cost price, that $110, and then multiply it by 0.2, or 20% instead of the 10%. This is equal to $22. And because we're adding that on, we're making that money, all I've got to do is the 110 plus 22 is equal to $132. That's how much the business is going to make. Then the government's going to say, well, we want 10% of that. So I'm going to go $132 multiplied by 0.1, or that 10%. And the government's going to make $13.20 off this sale. And now we're finally left with what the consumer has to pay. So $132 plus the $13.20 is equal to $145.20. So this is a lot more than the $110 that the business paid to make the item. But when we add those two percentages on, it gets a lot bigger, a lot quicker. Just be really mindful that you can't just go $110 multiplied by 0.3 or 30% to find this answer, because the government tax is done on the profit plus the original price, that $132. So this is just a way to think about, hey, what's my money actually getting for me? I'm paying for the item, and then I'm paying for the business profit, and finally the government tax. So it does add up pretty quick. Thanks so much for watching this lesson, and I'll see you later.